Welcome to episode 181 of the Arc Junkies podcast. Today I'm chatting with LB Diver from Long Beach, California. He runs the Bottom Dwellers Dive Shack podcast, and it's a podcast all about commercial diving. We got together and decided to do a cross pod where we're each going to promote this episode on both of our platforms. We're also looking into developing a skilled trades network to bring you all the podcasts from other blue-collar workers to promote skilled trades. As you all know, I'm a big proponent of getting people into the skilled trades as a career. Well, this is just one more way to promote the various skilled trades out there and get information to the masses, so stay tuned for more details. Today's episode of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by Fronius USA, and for the month of July, they have a great offer for listeners of the Arc Junkies podcast. Right now, when you buy any Transpocket 180, you get a free welding jacket and a pair of gloves. The Transpocket 180 is a wireless DC TIG and stick machine. Yes, I said wireless. And yes, it'll run your 60-10 rods as well. This machine is completely portable and only weighs 19.6 pounds. It's like a lunchbox. If you can get the machine to the work site, you can weld it. No need to worry about an outlet or an extension cord. The Transpocket 180 is powerful enough to run up to 532 welding rods. It also comes with a hard side case on wheels to store the machine and the accessories. How convenient is it just to be able to roll up to the job site, carry your machine right to the work, and just start welding without having to locate an outlet or run out a bunch of extension cords before you start welding? Now you have the ability to weld remotely, whether it's on a job site, at a boat ramp, inside of a restaurant, or up in a man lift. The sky's the limit. All you need to do to take advantage of this great deal is head over to shopweldingsupplies.com/ArcJunkies and put the machine, gloves, and jacket in your cart and use Arc Junkies in the discount box at checkout, and the jacket and gloves are yours for free. And if that wasn't enough, they're also offering free shipping as well. Take advantage of this great deal now through the end of the month. We're also brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. Rockmount electrodes are designed to weld stronger and last longer. These electrodes are specifically designed to weld in the toughest and harshest conditions to make in-service and field repairs. These are the electrodes you turn to when conventional stick, MIG, and TIG wires keep failing. Rockmount offers higher tensile strength with more elongation. What's that mean? You're getting a stronger weld that's also more ductile to prevent repeated cracking. So essentially, you're making the repair once and getting it done right the first time, saving you time and money. They also have a full line of hard-facing rods and wires to keep your equipment from wearing down prematurely. You spend a lot of money on those buckets and other attachments. Don't allow them to get worn out before you get your return on your investment. Protect them and keep them in the game and making you money with Rockmount Zeta C hard-facing line. Rockmount has a solution for every welding challenge you're currently facing. They also have a very knowledgeable staff that can work with you to find a solution to your most common repairs. You can give them a call at 1-800-272-7637 and tell them the Arc Junkie sent you. And for more information, check out rockmountwelding.com. We're also brought to you by Everlast Welders, my go-to for at-home welding solutions. Whether you need to perform stick, MIG, TIG, or flux core at the home or in your small shop, Everlast has a machine for you. They also have several multi-process machines available because we all know every side job or project that we're working on doesn't always require the same application. You never know what project is going to come through the door, so be prepared by investing in a multi-process machine like a Lightning MTS series, whether it's the 225 or the 275. You can run every process, including AC TIG for aluminum, as well as all your DC stick, TIG, and flux core processes. This is a true multi-process machine. I know what you're thinking. What if I don't know how to run all those other processes? That's okay. You can learn and practice from the comfort of your own home with the Everlast Welders YouTube channel. You can also get great advice and feedback on techniques and troubleshooting from the Everlast Welders Facebook page. And right now, when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal, you can use Arc Junkies in the comment section at checkout and get a free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade absolutely free. That's a $200 value. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the Arc Junkies podcast. Helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
Hey guys, this is LB Diver with the Bottom Dwellers Dive Shack.
This is Jason Becker with the Arc Junkies podcast.
We want to welcome you guys to this special dual episode of the Bottom Dwellers and Arc Junkies. We're going to be talking about the trades. We're going to be talking about a little bit of diving, some welding. It's going to be a great episode. Hope you guys enjoy it. Well, it's great that we're doing this dual episode, man. This is awesome.
I'm really excited about it. This is my first cross pod, I guess they call it, like cross podcast, talking to other podcasters like within the welding industry anyway.
It's kind of like one of those TikTok duel things, right?
Yeah,
so
it's
we're
kind of
gonna
like
be doing
a
some
Stitch.
dancing too with this
no,
episode.
no, I can't dance. No.
Just kidding. Yeah, so it seems like social media is a big tool, dude. Seems like everybody's on, everybody's using it. We got the TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Facebook's old for old people now, right?
Right. I guess they call that the for the boomers.
Yeah, I remember freaking MySpace doing the band pages on MySpace.
Oh yeah, now we're dating ourselves there. Yeah, I had a MySpace profile for a hot minute.
What about the AOL Instant Messenger? That was crazy. That was all we had back then.
Yeah, I mean that was pretty much the forefront, So I think it started off with AOL Instant Messenger, and then it kind of developed into MySpace, and then Facebook took over, and then I think right after that, your Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff popped off, and now we got all kinds of crap. There's what do you got? You got the TikTok, and then there's just too damn many to name. There's so many different forms of social media, but I think the coolest part about it, everybody can find a niche. They can find more exposure to different things that aren't, that are kind of like outside of your wheelhouse.
And that's how I found your podcast. I found your podcast on Instagram because you posted some cool pics and stuff, started listening to some of your episodes and was like, man, this guy knows what he's talking about. So along with social media, you got a lot of people that are doing things and saying things without any repercussion. So us in the trades, we've got repercussions. If we say something, we're going to get called out on our BS. So I think that's why we've seen the success that we've seen in our podcasts. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, you got to keep everything relevant, topical, and then credible. I think that's the biggest thing, because if you're not credible, if you're just spouting off a bunch of BS that you don't know anything about, or your audience, doesn't, they actually know what they're talking about, they'll call you out on it real quick, and you can see that, because people stop listening.
Exactly. So I'm a commercial diver. I've been doing my trade for about 16 years. I started out doing carpentry, so I've been in the trades pretty much most of my adult life. I started out doing volunteer projects with my church at about 17 years old, doing some builds, and that kind of got me a little taste. I was a nerdy kid playing baseball. Played orchestra, played violin, and everything. Being a tradesman was the furthest thing from my mind. I thought I was going to go straight to college. But I got a little bit of taste of that construction. Took auto shop. My first job was at Jiffy Lube, and so I got my hands dirty while I was, going towards a white collar field with college and everything. And then later on, it wasn't for me. Did about a year and a half and just didn't like the constant. Just didn't like it. Found out, that I was actually working, with the union, carpenters union, and going to school at the same time. And it got to the point where we're like, dude, this is pointless. I'm making way more than my professor at this point, with the overtime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a similar.
So what's your thoughts on that? Yeah.
I had a similar situation. I was going for my bachelor's degree in construction management, and it wasn't until about 3/4 of the way through that I realized, damn, like if I get into this construction management trade, I'm looking at starting salaries, because I've got other classmates and stuff that they're graduating and they're getting into the industry, and it's like, damn, I'm going to take like a $10,000 to $15,000 a year pay cut to get into this industry that I've been studying 6 freaking years for. Yeah, no, I think I'm going to go ahead and finish up this degree, and then I'm going to be sitting in an office, and that's something that I didn't want to do, and that's why I picked construction management, because I figured I'd be in the field. I don't have to necessarily disconnect from the field, but I'm not going to be behind the tools. And then I realized that the more you get into it, it's like it's office meetings. I'm stuck in a cubicle or an office or behind a computer, all day. That's not what I want, man. I want to keep getting my hands dirty. I want to keep building things, and then be able to pass that knowledge off to other people, and that's kind of how I ended up in education.
And that's awesome, dude. And the thing is, like we both said, you have to be exposed to pretty much everything to know what you want. They say that you figure out what you want to do in college, but I mean, my personal, experience, I kind of got a little bit of everything starting in high school, and I think the trades are definitely a good means of living to provide for yourself and your family in the future. You can save a ton of money. I mean, let's just look at some of the costs for tuition. I mean, it's crazy. Now, being a diver, the trade school for diving, it's about $30,000. I think it's gone up a little bit more. So it's somewhat expensive, but I mean, you're talking, compared to a 4-year school at State College, you're looking like $100,000,
Yeah. Yeah, that's not bad because I looked into commercial diving. So like when I right about the age of, I don't know, I was probably 13, 14, I thought about getting in and becoming a marine biologist or something like that. And then I kind of realized, I'm not too big on this whole science thing. There's a lot of other stuff and Latin and all that other stuff that I have to learn. And it just kind of wasn't my thing, but I enjoyed the ocean. I went and got open water certification. Later on, I got into welding. And, that was one of the things I was actually considering when I turned 18 is like, man, I want to go to underwater welding school. Looked at the price, kind of wasn't for me. I ended up, going into the military instead. But, that would comparatively to the amount you're going to spend on college or, commercial diving school or welding school. Let's say, for instance, you threw out $30,000. So you got $30,000. What's the typical starting salary for an underwater welder once they get done with the school? What's that return on the investment over the course of the first, second, and third year?
Right. The return's not that great right now for the first, 2 years or so. You pretty much have to stick it out for, a good 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. So you're still making money. Now, that's kind of a weird situation too, that's kind of a different conversation to have, later on. But just saying, you're not going to get a high-paying job right out of diving school. So, there is still some apprenticeship process that you have to go through.
Right.
Now, with the Carpenters Union, you do an actual apprenticeship, and they have these set stages that you're doing with the hours that you need to attain in order to get your step level increases. As a diver, you get your dive pay with the union, but it's really hard to break out with the union because, all divers make the same, which is the highest, high dollar amount. So divers in Southern California with the union are making about, I think right now it's like about $100 an hour. So, it's quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent salary right there.
Right.
When you think comparatively to the cost of the education as to, if you went and got a degree in something else, you got like a liberal arts degree or, let's say I got my construction management degree. How many years do I have to put in before I'm making that 70, 80, 100K a year? I'm going to have to put in a lot of years. And not only that, you got to start off as a scheduler, a detailer, a budget estimator. You have to kind of cut your teeth on all that stuff before you're actually running work and running a job and making that kind of salary. All the while, you're still paying off that $100,000 of debt, that you took out for, going to school. And a lot of times that when you're absorbing that information in college, that textbook was outdated, the day that you started class. Things have changed so fast in the construction industry that the material and the information you're getting, it's not really relevant. By the time they put the information in the textbook, they got it certified and they got it printed and they got it distributed. Information is really not as relevant as it was when they put the textbook together. So now you're already behind when you're getting out.
So instead of burning cash and having debt, we're burning metal, aren't we?
Yeah, get into a trade, man. You can get into a trade, short-term training program. How long was your dive apprenticeship, or how long was your dive program, your dive school?
Mine was about a year, but there's shorter programs out there. Programs vary in length. Mine was a special weekend program, so it was through a whole year of school for me. But I think it's usually around 8 weeks or so, something like that, a couple months.
Okay, yeah, that's not too bad. And then comparatively, like actual welding, like my school is the one that I teach at, we can get you through level 1 and level 2 in 40 weeks. Some schools are, 6 months. Some schools are up to 18 months. It just depends on the level of training that you're going to get, what you're going in for. That's one of the things you want to make sure. Like if you're going to be a commercial diver or you're going to be a welder, you want to make sure that, start at your end goal and start working backwards. Make sure that school you're going to go to, whether it's underwater diving, carpentry, welding, electrician, make sure that school is going to be able to help you attain those goals that you want to reach once you get out. Once you hit that graduation date, you should be able to hit the ground running.
Right. And then that, again, like I said before, it kind of depends, on how much you're making afterwards. It depends on the training. If you're going to a school that's giving you the bare minimum, you're probably not going to get that high dollar job right out of dive school or right out of welding school. People know in the industry which, places give you the best education, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There's people that travel from all over for the different dive schools. I know that there's a few of them. I think we got one in Jacksonville. There's one up in Jersey, one out in California. You got Ocean Corp out in Texas. And I think there's one in North Carolina or South Carolina one of my students was going to go to. So, you've got your pick, but, if you don't live in one of those cities, you got to travel. And then you got to figure out which is going to be the best school, once again, to hit your end goal. So for some, it might be over here on the East Coast taking a class, or it might be worth your investment and time to to go out in Texas or even out to LA to what's that one? The College of Oceaneering, is that the one in LA?
Yeah, it's not there anymore. And actually,
Okay.
I think the one in South Carolina closed down recently as well.
Oh, damn.
So
Yeah, that makes sense.
Some of these trade schools are closing too, man. So, yeah.
I think that's what really screwed things up is like when they started taking the trades out of high school. Like I remember going through high school and I was able to take pottery, which I've spun some clay. What about it?
Hell yeah.
So pottery, we had technical drawing, so I actually got to learn blueprints. Like my 10th grade year, actually, because drawing them out. I mean, you're going to learn them if you have to draw them. So we had to do technical drawing. We didn't have to. That was just a class I picked. We had carpentry and woodworking. And, a part of that, one of the components to that was also a small portion on welding. We had to weld up like a little widget, and working off a blueprint. But they don't have these skilled trades programs in high schools to introduce this information to students.
Dude, and it drives me nuts. It's like maddening. You heard the old timers, telling us when they were coming up, oh, I can't believe they took out wood shop. It's, you guys need something like that. And at the time we're kids, we're like, wood shop, who cares about wood shop? I don't want to build a birdhouse. But looking back on it, it's like, dude, that's teaching a generation of people to work with their hands, to use their hands to do something. I also do I used to do a little bit of handyman stuff, and you'd be surprised at the amount of jobs that they would ask me to come do, putting up shelves. It's like, seriously?
Yeah, and I think they really screwed the pooch when they started taking those programs out of school because not everybody's destined for college. And if you are, great, man, go forth and do great things with it. Study, put in all the time, learn that skill, learn that, whatever it is, whatever that, that credentialing that you're going after, whether it's a bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctorate, whatever, do that if you know that that's for you. But if you're not the type to go to school and, sit in a class all day and learn theory and things like that without having the practical application or the hands-on, or you're just tired of school, look into the trades. I mean, you can't go wrong looking into the trades. And like worst case scenario, you get into the trades, you don't like it. Now you got a bunch of money in your pocket. You can actually go work on your bachelor's degree or master's degree, and you can make payments on that instead of taking out ridiculous amounts of student debt.
Exactly. And I've shared the story before. I knew a diver that he would work during the busy season on an oil rig. Excuse me. And then during the off season, he would go to school. He put himself through school, eventually becoming a professional engineer. So that's not an easy feat either, to go from a grunt diver to a PE civil engineer. So it can be done. It's been done before. So, there's always ways to improve yourself. And if you haven't guessed already, Jason and I were talking a little bit about the trades and the importance of the trades, specifically getting more vocational schools in the high schools in areas that are lower income if needed, and areas that are higher income. I mean, to tell you the truth, that's what blue collar is about. It's, getting dirty, working with your body, providing for your family. And it's like I said, it just drives me nuts to see all these slogans, support blue collar, clean hands or money or whatever the hell that stuff is. It's like, dude, put your money where your mouth is. Freaking help us get some more vocational programs in these high schools. That's how you support blue collar, is by educating the next generation of tradesmen.
That's one of the things I want to work on now, is because now that I'm kind of pulled out of the classroom, so I teach welding full time, but I'm running it as a management type position now. So I actually have other welding instructors under me. We're running the facility, and they're doing all the training and the education. I do a lot of the testing and facilitating and building new schools and programs and stuff. One of the things that I want to do this year is kind of go out, reach out to the local high schools and help them apply for different grants. There's different grants from different welding equipment manufacturers. The American Welding Society has grants, just to put a small welding component inside of a classroom, not necessarily your typical classroom, but like in a shop class. You can get like 1 or 2 booths, a welding machine, just expose them to it. Just kind of show them that this is an option.
And that's going to help you. We're not saying full blown, you're coming out of this high school. I mean, given it'd be awesome though, if you came out with your 3G, 4G right out of high school, but I'm just saying though, a little bit exposure, just like when I was going through high school, I was exposed a little bit to auto shop, so I even had a job as a, Jiffy Lube technician, lowly dude. But I also had, carpentry during high school as well. I was exposed to that. I didn't have any desire to go into the trades at that moment. Started doing college, just wasn't for me. Then went into the trades. We need to be exposed to everything in order to be able to, better ourselves or make a good life.
Yeah. And I think having the awareness of like we talked about, at the beginning of the episode, as far as like social media with, now you've got YouTube, so you can actually watch videos on a specific trade and be like, I could see myself doing that. Or you could sit down and, on your way to work, you could listen to a podcast and be like, damn, these guys are like, they're really passionate about what they're talking about. They love what they do and they know their stuff. Maybe that's something I could get into, so I think the power of social media and the various resources that are out there, it's getting exposure. It's gaining traction, like it never has before. And I love seeing that.
And that being said, Jason and I, for both of our listeners, we've been talking about doing a network of trades podcasts. That way, you just go to one, web page or one feed, and you have access to all the trades. So Jason and I were starting the Skilled Trades Network. So we want you guys to stay tuned for more news on that. And if you do have a podcast or know of a podcast that would fit in well with our podcast network of trades, then let us know. Drop us a line. We'll check it out, and then hopefully we can make something happen. But that's what we want to do, man. That's how you support blue collar, is you bring awareness to all the darn trades. We're talking welders, divers, electricians, linemen, boiler makers. Everything. There's so many trades out there that people don't even know about. You don't have to be pigeonholed into call center technician or T-Mobile guy or college dude. There's another option for good pay.
Yeah.
And, jobs that are needed.
And that's the thing, is because like, I think as much as COVID sucked, it woke up a lot of people, because all of a sudden skilled trade workers were labeled as, essential. They were essential workers. Like, even as an educator, I wasn't without work the entire time. And most of the students that were in my program at the time, I had companies calling me saying, hey, we need welders bad. Do you have anybody that's not in school right now that can, run a bead using this process? Yeah, let me make a couple phone calls. I mean, we were getting students hired during COVID. So when you think about
crazy.
it, those are the essential workers. And in Florida, we're in the hospitality industry. Well, most of, I'm right here, right out of Kissimmee area is where I teach at. Most of those people are working at Disney and Universal. Well, hell, some of those companies laid off to 50% of their workforce. So you realize how important you are to that company. It's like, damn, maybe I need to get a job that's recession proof, like utilities. Mm-hmm. We're always going to need fresh, clean water. We're always going to need electricity. People like being able to walk into a room and hit a light switch and a light comes on. Especially down here in Florida, not so much in Cali, because you guys have beautiful weather over there. But like, I like coming home at the end of the day and walking outside, walking inside, and it's 98 degrees outside, and I walk in and it's like a cool, comfortable 72. I like having those benefits, and so does everybody else. So somebody's going to have to keep the power running. Somebody's got to keep that water coming in, because I want to take a clean shower, a good shower when I get home. So these are recession proof. These are jobs that are going to be in demand regardless of what happens to the economy and all that stuff. As I got into welding at the age of 15. I've never been without work. And not that I was working 15 to 18 as a welder, but once I got out, I got in the military, got into structural steel ironwork. I've never been without a job. And most of the time I'm turning side work down because I'm too damn busy. So there's always work out there. And if I was hungry, like Christmas is coming up, I want to pick up a couple extra bucks because I want to spoil the hell out of my kids, because they've been good this year. Santa's going to be busting his ass out here in the garage, putting some stuff together, tinkering around, building things for people or repairing things so I can make some extra income.
And that's something nobody can take away. Nobody can take away freaking your knowledge, your skill and know-how. Mm-hmm. You could lose it through injury or something else, but nobody can take that away from you. Other trades or not trades, other jobs, they can take that away from you. We saw that during COVID. Mm-hmm. All that was taken away. A lot of these other jobs, that are like in retail and restaurants and stuff, that was all taken away. But you can't take away the trades.
Yeah.
So freaking awesome, dude. That's why we're starting the Skilled Trade Network, to get as many people exposed to the trades as possible. That's how you support blue collar. And then that's how you take pride, in your country.
Yeah.
So this is awesome.
No,
I'm
now
really glad that we did this episode.
We got to come out with some blue collar merch or something now, because like you see, I mean, that's the thing is like you see all these blue collar merch, suppliers and stuff like that, and they're basically targeting blue collar workers, and most of the people, they're just coming out with fancy sayings. They're not backing the brand. They've never got their hands dirty. They're just, it's an open market. There's people interested in it. Let's make some cool shirts, slap some badass logos and graphics on there, and come up with a catchy trade, slogan, and throw it out there, and we'll sell it to the masses. And that's what people do.
That's the thing
and that's where they're supporting the blue collar stops, is t-shirt and hat sales.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you're buying stuff that says blue collar from white collar people. Mm-hmm. Just let that sink in a little bit. Anyhow, I think we beat that horse to death. But yeah, we are going to do some stuff with the Skilled Trades Network. We're going to put some merch out there for sure. I wanted to talk a little bit about diving since I got you here. You got to dive a little bit recently.
Yes.
I remember seeing that with a bunch of other welding instructors. A friend of mine at the Breakdown the Dive, he interviewed another one of the welding. I forgot her name. I think it's one of the welding, female welding instructor.
So probably, there, and, probably Stephanie Hoffman.
Yes, I think that was it. So, cool little episode. She was great. What was your experience in the tank?
I had a freaking blast, man. So, like, I've been wanting, like I said, I wanted to do this since, like, high school, because I learned how to do, I got my open water dive certification before I had my driver's license, so, like, age 15, I got my my open water through Nowie, right here in Kissimmee, or right down in Kissimmee, Florida. And
Florida, everyone dives, dude.
Everybody dives, and I'm pretty much like I'm in the dead center of the state, so you got to travel hour and a half, either east or west to get into the water.
I know Kissimmee very well. I lived in St. Cloud, for about 6 years.
Oh, you're right up the street, man. I get a lot of kids from St. Cloud.
Down the street.
Yeah, but
I actually bartended at O'Doherty's Irish Pub in St. Cloud, if you know of it. I don't know if it's still there anymore. I think it's it's Riley's now or something.
Okay.
Anyhow.
Yeah, so I got into that. So like underwater welding, it's been something that's been on my bucket list forever. And the guys from Outlaw Leather called me up and they're like, "Hey man, you want to come down to Houston and do some underwater welding?" Yeah, let me just say when, man. Tell me the date and I'll be there. And the people over at the Ocean Corp were kind enough to open their doors up to us and let everybody come down. So, I mean, there was 20, 30 of us out there, and we got to do the underwater welding. So the first thing we did, they kind of suit us up, drop us in the pool, kind of let you float around, get your bearings a little bit, used to it. Not everybody has had the opportunity to breathe underwater before, so for some they were a little claustrophobic at first, but then they got their water shoes on and they're walking around, everything's going good. And then once everybody kind of got a chance to jump in the pool, they're like, "All right, we're gonna do a little bit of welding." So I was like, okay. So they gave us a little bit of direction. I did my first practice pieces, like just regular beat on pad, just trying to get we're using the Broco rods, trying to get the hang of that. And I was like, okay, looking at my welds, I was like, damn, yeah, that looks bad. I gotta slow down a little bit. So that was the thing, is like slow down, constant pressure. You probably weld underwater about a third of the speed that you do on top side, and you apply more pressure. Just like if you're doing like downhill pipe, you want to put a little bit of pressure in there, not too much. But you put a little bit of flex to the rod, and it went in there smooth. I ended up got a 2F weld certification. So we got to weld up some other cool pieces. So Marshall Whitney with Rom Furniture, he cut out like a bunch of different states. So he had like Rhode Island and Texas and a bunch of other states. We actually got to weld up a state on a stand. So now I've got that as like my paperweight. It's a horrible looking weld, but it was my first underwater weld. But then I got to do the 2F piece, brought that up to the surface. It met the visual inspection. They sent it off to a third-party CWI, and I actually got certed. So the first time I did underwater welding, I earned a certification for it. So I thought that was kind of cool. I didn't think anything was going to be able to top the day, but being able to earn a certification the first time I've ever done underwater welding, I thought that was kind of cool. Even if it's 2F, it's just a horizontal. But the experience was really cool. And I could see why you guys would want to do that. I'll tell you one thing: that freaking helmet that's heavy. That'll give you a neck workout topside, and then once you get in the water, it starts floating away on you. So I don't know if the one I had was a little bit too big for my head. I got a pretty big head, but it just seemed like it kept trying to float away. So as I'm welding, I'm like pushing down on top of the helmet to try and, be able to get the lens in my sight to be able to see what I'm doing. But even then, you really can't see what you're doing. It's like welding by braille. You just got to feel it, because all the bubbles that are coming off of it, you get that bright arc. It was difficult to see, but I had the whole day. It was just a blast being able to do that. And then my buddy Ray Ripple, she got to run the exothermic cutter underwater and cut through concrete, steel, and rebar. So she got to keep that piece that she cut through, and she made some nice clean cuts. But yeah, that water looked like chocolate milk when she was done with it. I mean, it was just destroyed in that little pool. But all in all, it was a great day, man. Had an awesome experience, and I got to put another check in the box for my bucket list.
That's pretty cool, man, that you got to experience that. So, yeah, burning with the exothermic rods, that's a trip, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could burn through concrete. I mean, how awesome is that? I mean, you're cutting through concrete. That's pretty cool. As a diver, we use that more than our welding. A lot of these guys are doing more burning jobs than welding jobs, because as you know, certain welds you have to get certified. At certain depths. I'm not sure if they explained that to you. At that little in-dock course. So what you did was pretty much an indoctrination dive. So for all those divers that are listening, is like, oh, he was in the water, with a dive hat, he shouldn't be doing that. ADCI does allow us to do in-dock dives. So, you can put someone in that's never been in a hat and put them in the water. That's an indoctrination dive. They just happen to have a welding setup, and they just happen to run some beads, so it's all good. Mm-hmm. I stand fully behind Ocean Corp, and they're getting these guys out there. So, and these aren't your regular welders. I mean, you guys were all seasoned welders, welding instructors, and it looked like it was a great day.
Yeah.
It looked like it was a ton of fun.
We're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by Strong Hand Tools. Whether you're looking for a solid fabrication table, toggle clamps, material holds, bottle carriers, vices, torch holders, cylinder carts, or any other items to make your shop and fabrication life faster, safer, and more accurate and easier, they have it all. Check them out at stronghandtools.com/ArcJunkies and view their full line of products. We're also brought to you by AHP Welders. AHP makes great machines for under $1,000. These machines are ideal for students, home hobbyists, tinkers, and makers. You get all the great performance and reliability for less money. Head on over to ahpwelds.com and see what's right for you. They have a machine for every skill level and every budget. That's ahpwelds.com. Now let's get back into the show. Yeah, and they had all their other instructors were out there. I mean, everything, safety was at the forefront the entire time. We had to go through like a little class prior to even getting up on the deck to be able to, put the gear on and stuff like that. And they went over all the different safety precautions and hand signals and all that, and how comms were going to work. So I felt really secure jumping in there, because if you've never jumped in the water and like tried to breathe underwater, whether it's scuba or with a hat on, it's a different experience. You can get freaked out really quick. I mean, it kind of at the dive center, when we dove in the pool there, it was kind of natural to me because I've done scuba diving before, so I'm kind of used to that. I'm not claustrophobic. It was just kind of getting used to the gear. But yeah, everything was safety at the forefront. They had all the redundancies in place and everything like that. So we had like the what the hell you call it, secondary air supply and all that stuff. Everything was there. I guess it's a Nubo or whatever. Everything was there, as far as like safety and stuff. So, and then they had another instructor in the tank with us. So just in case anything did go wrong, they had somebody there. Yeah.
I mean, you've got someone right there holding your hand. If you were to pass out or panic, they'd get you up pretty quick.
Yeah,
I've helped with some of those dives before too. Those in-dock dives. But so if you had say you had another extra day, you think you could have gotten your vertical and your overhead?
I don't want to get too cocky, but I think if I had like some instruction on somebody that's done it before, I think I probably could have done it. Like I said, I don't want to be cocky, but like I'm not willing to turn anything down when it comes to welding. I'll give it a shot, and if I screw it up, you know what? I mean, that's my slogan: make every weld better than your last. So if I screw one up, I'm just going to try it again. I'm just going to keep trying until I get it right.
And the point that I'm making there is that I'm telling you, if you have some familiarity with welding, you're gonna be better.
Mm-hmm.
So once you went past that little learning curve of that hour of just melting, burning rod there, I'm sure you were able to run a bead in order to get past the visual inspection. I mean, that's saying a lot for someone that's never dove, a hat before. So my piece of advice to those divers out there, If you want to be a diver, an underwater, construction worker, pretty much is what we are. Get some topside skills first. It's going to help you. Go get some welding certs. Go to Jason's school. Get some welding certs topside. That's going to look good on your job resume, and it's going to make you a better diver, because you're not going to magically be able to run good bead underwater if you've never ran a single bead topside. I'm telling you that right now.
Yeah, I would say, and that's kind of like a big misconception, and you'll be able to speak to this more than I can, but from what I understand is like everybody wants to be like, I get all these students in all the time. They're like, hey man, that's what I want to do. I want to be an underwater welder because they make all kinds of money and they do this and that. It's like, yeah, but when I was at the dive school, they kind of explained to us. And then I had Richard Johnston from Ocean Corp on the podcast. We talked about, the amount of time you're actually welding you're a commercial diver. You're not an underwater welder. You've been in the industry longer, probably longer than, most people that I know that have done it. How much of your time is actually spent welding compared to everything else? They told me it was roughly about 5%. So I don't think you're going to have somebody that's just an underwater welder. You're a commercial diver first and foremost. And most of the stuff you guys do is like cutting and, rigging things up and taking them out of the water to do the repair and then putting them back in the water.
Yeah, and that's about right. There is a handful of guys that I do know that they do quite a bit of welding. And once you have that name to yourself, you're the go-to guy for those welding jobs. And another interesting thing, Jason, that your listeners might appreciate is that a lot of the welding that's done, that's a structural steel, if it's a deep job, the weld test has to be done at depth. Mm-hmm. So you're welding plates at depth and they're bending them, so and the type of metal, that's steel or whatever you're using for that structure, you have to weld on that metal at that depth. And if the depth changes, you also have to weld at that new depth. So there's a lot involved. So just because you have, like myself, I've only got, my 3F and 4F, which is the underwater, vertical and overhead. Mm-hmm. But I would have to recert on some of the bigger jobs. Now, some of the jobs like on ship work and pile driving jobs, which I've done quite a bit, like welding anodes and stuff in the water, that you don't really need to recert. My certs would be fine. But for the most part, welding jobs are far and few between in the construction business of underwater construction. So having that good welding skill topside, that's going to help you when times dry up. And as a welder, that too. The amount of side work that you can potentially get as a welder is amazing, isn't it?
Oh yeah. There's, like I said, there's a lot of times that I'm turning work down just because I'm too busy. I don't have time to do it.
So that's same thing. There's busy seasons in diving too. Construction is feast or famine, as everyone tells you. But it's not so much famine if, you've got a couple skills that you can exploit during the slow times.
Yeah.
I always laugh when people said it was feast or famine. The only time that I felt like really iffy maybe was during the Great Recession. I think in 2008 or so, I had, half a year where I was like, holy crap, this sucks, But other than that, it's been pretty good just because I've been well-rounded. Mm-hmm. Now, that applies to both of our trades. You have to be well-rounded, right?
Yes.
You can't just be like, I only weld stick, right?
Yeah, I was listening to I watched a YouTube video the other day by a gentleman by the name of Kai Bradford, and he was talking about like, you're not just a welder, and this, it kind of goes without saying, but if you're not familiar with the industry, there's very few jobs where you're just going to show up and everything's already set up and tacked in position. I've never been on a single structural job where it's like, okay, I'm the welder and I just go up there and I just start welding connections together. That's not going to happen. You've got to get the stuff off the truck. You got to put the bevel on it. You got to clean it up. You got to set anchor bolts. You got to wire brush anchor bolts. You got to level everything off, get these things in position, clamp it up, fit it, then you can weld it. So like I tell my students, like welding is probably 20% of what you're going to do. The other 80% of the time, your material handling, you're cutting, you're fitting, you're fabbing, welding is probably the most technical part. So you're going to have to spend the majority of your time doing that. But leading up to that, you really got to know how to read a tape measure and use common hand tools and fixture things so you can avoid warpage and, being able to follow a blueprint and then being able to pick out the parts of the blueprint where you're going to need like an RFI or request for information because it's not clear, because it looked good to the engineer on paper, but once you got it out to the job site, it's like, this isn't going to fit. That weld isn't going to be able to go there if this is the sequence of construction. So these are some of the things you got to start planning out. I tell my students all the time, plan your work and work your plan. You can't just go in there and just start slapping stuff together. And, I'll give them blueprint projects all the time, and you can see it. They'll just grab everything and just start tacking it, and they'll weld the whole thing out. And it's like, oh man, you really screwed that up, huh? You didn't lay out your measurements, and now your pieces are warped and everything because you didn't get everything square before you tacked it up, and you thought the welding part was the most. And I'll let them fail just so that they can understand that part. They'll go through and weld it up, and now the whole thing is just warped to hell. It's like you didn't plan out your bead sequence. You didn't tack everything together that you should have, because these tacks on this part are going to hold this piece in place so that when you weld on it, it's not going to pull. Or, instead of welding, this side and around just because it's easier and closer, you might need to weld opposite corners. So if you start bottom right, you might need to go top left next to work that distortion out. And these are just things you need to know. So being a well-rounded welder or a well-rounded tradesman, that's just going to help you out. Don't go to welding school and just think that that's the only thing I'm going to do is weld 3G test plates once I get out in the field, because that's not going to happen. I don't want to bust anybody's bubble, but get in there, get as much hood time as you can, but also learn that fabrication component, and learn being a team player, and learn you're going to have to punk around a keg of bolts every once in a while if you're on a structural job. You're going to have to run line out. You're going to have to roll up lead at the end of the day. It's not just show up, weld, and go home. There's not going to be a red carpet rolled out for you once you get there.
And that's why I think this episode is going to be the freaking best, because our trades are so similar. We kind of have these, everybody kind of looks at us like, man, these guys are badass, So that's the idea that you've got in your head as a young person going into welding school or going into dive school. You're expecting that, you're getting into the trade for the glory initially, but then you get on the job site and you're like, holy crap, I've got to go to work.
Yeah.
I've got to get to work. It's not just welding bead. It's not just putting on a helmet and going in the water. That's just a method to, just a mode of transportation to your job site.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you're telling these guys the truth. These kids that are going through your school, you're telling them the truth. A lot of the dive schools, they're not. And it's a rude awakening. If you don't prepare them, they're going to be lost.
Yeah, and
it's not fair. It's not fair to pay that much money to invest, that much money into something and just be totally unprepared. So
yeah. I get people in the program all the time. They're like, man, I didn't realize it was going to be this much work, or I didn't realize it was going to be this hot. And it's like, you do realize that steel is heavy. Like most of the stuff we're working on is steel. So that's going to be heavy. So it's a lot of work moving it from point A to point B and cutting it up into smaller pieces and getting it just right. There's a lot of work in that. And then, it's going to be heavy. You're melting steel and aluminum with electricity, let alone, you're playing with an arc that's about 10,000 degrees and you're welding, you're wearing a welding jacket. You got a welding hood on, beanies, gloves, you got all this safety gear on, and we're in an air conditioned shop. They've got it made, man. It's like a constant 75 degrees in there. This ain't hot. Let's go out in the parking lot. We're going to fire up the engine drive in July, and we're going to go out there and weld in that. That's hot, and I get them to do that. But we started I started doing interviews with the students prior to them coming into the program, because I want them to know this is what you're going to get into. It's not going to be easy, and if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it. But if you put all the effort into it, and this is something that you want to do, I can guarantee you it'll be worth it. And nothing that's worth it is going to come easy. You're going to have to put in a lot of time. You're going to have to put in a lot of effort. You're going to have to get out of bed and go to work or come to school when you simply don't want to. You got a case of the screw-its because it's Monday and you stayed up too late partying all weekend. You still need to be there on Monday. Same thing once you get on a job. I set the same expectations for the students coming through the program that an employer is going to hold them to, because a lot of them, they haven't had a job, that required that amount of work ethic, that amount of dedication and hard work. Yeah, if you think welding school is hard, wait till you get out in the field and you got to do this stuff for 12, 16 hours a day. And you're come Wednesday. Yeah, come Wednesday, your body's like giving out and it's like, shit, I still got, oh, damn, we're working 7/12s. Yeah, I don't have a day off this weekend. Yeah, it's going to happen. I kind of give them a reality check and say, this is what you're getting into. This is the line of work you're choosing to pursue right now.
And that's great. And again, that goes back to earlier in the conversation. If some of these kids coming through these schools would get exposed to it a little bit, say during high school, that would help them out. That might weed out some of the weaker ones, or that might strengthen some of the ones that, are on the fence about it. So,
yeah,
again, big proponent for vocational schools. So I just wish there were more federal grants for vocational schools. Now, the military is doing a good job with being able to use your GI Bills for like dive school. And they also allow it for the welding school, right? For all these vocational schools.
For most vocational schools, they're GI Bill eligible.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there is a little bit of a caveat for the schools that do accept the GI Bill money. They also have to help them with job placement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where some of the diving schools are getting in hot water. They're not doing a good job with the job placement. They're accepting 1 million students, but they're not placing them or not helping them get placed. And a lot of them are washing out. We call it washing out. I'm sure it's the same in your trade too, So, yeah, that's kind of what's going on with the dive business. I'm not sure if you guys have that problem with people leaving the trade and all that.
Not a whole lot. I mean, at least not from our school. I mean, most of the students go through the program, they understand what they're getting into. I personally help them find jobs, and I just I like doing that because I like reaching out to the employers, making sure that what I'm teaching is relevant. And, once the employers understand, okay, he's teaching what we need, these are the students that he's training, let's give them a shot. And developing those relationships and helping those students, like say, hey, here's a good employer for you. You'd be a good match for them because you want to work outside. You've got that work ethic. You're drawn to this type of work. I think you should go work for this company. Not that I get anything for it other than the satisfaction of helping somebody, change their situation. So I get a kick out of it. So I'm constantly trying to help place my students, work with the employers to make sure that they're getting good employees from my student pool, and making sure the students get placed because they came into welding to get a welding job. And I mean, I'm just the first line of defense. I mean, we've got a whole recruiting and job placement team that if I miss something or I can't find them a job, we've got a recruiting and job placement team that's their full-time deal, is to place these students. But I mean, what was it like?
That's amazing, dude.
What was it like when you went through?
That's a lot of time. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to ask you, what was it like when you went through dive school? Did you have, what was your class size? How many people washed out? How many people started on day one that didn't graduate? On that final day.
Yeah, so we had one guy that didn't graduate. That was out of class of 11. It was a small class, so it worked out pretty well for me because the company that I ended up working for, they put me through dive school and they had me sign a contract saying that, we're putting you through dive school. You got to stay with us for 2 years. And I'm like, nice. I go to school for free and get job security for 2 years. Awesome.
Yeah, that's not a bad deal at all.
So my situation was a little bit different than a lot of other guys,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had it, made, as long as I didn't, screw up completely and get fired. That was the only other thing too. I couldn't be a complete chode,
Right.
But yeah, so for me, work was pretty good. I had a good solid background in construction already before becoming a diver and going to dive school and joining the company and stuff, but I was going to talk about how you're preparing your students for the trade by talking to the contractors, right? And finding out what they need and kind of tailoring your curriculum with that, right?
Yeah.
So I remember listening to an earlier podcast of yours, and somebody said almost the exact opposite, that I need to get some of these, contractors out here to watch how we train them. That way they can understand our students better when they go to their jobs and fail. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, dude, that's backwards. You want to tailor to the companies that are paying the paycheck, And again, that's another thing too, is that there has to be a relationship between contractor and school, mm-hmm. right? Contractor and instructor.
To an extent, and I remember the episode you're talking about, and I think it was because he had sent a student out, one of his awesome students, and they had a machine that the student had never ran before. So, the student, he's fully capable of setting the machine up, but I mean, depending on, so most of my machines, I've got brand new equipment in my welding lab because we did receive grants and stuff like that. So I bought top of the line stuff to train them, get them the best training, expose them to the new stuff that's going on. But sometimes when they get out in the industry, they're working on equipment that's 20 years old and it's all analog.
Yeah.
So I think the point that he was making was he brought one of the test supervisors into his school and said, okay, now you try to take that same test using this piece of equipment. So I think it was more for, hey, give these kids a break. They haven't used that type of equipment. Give them a shot, show them how to set that machine up, because every machine's a little bit different. I imagine, you guys probably within commercial diving, you probably all have similar equipment across the board, even though it's just different manufacturer. But I think that was the point he was trying to make is like, if he's got the skills, you just need to show him how to use that machine, because you guys are running a dinosaur and, I've got something that's like top of the line over here. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I like having older equipment in my shop and newer equipment. One of the things I'll do is I'll tape out the LED displays and say, okay, now you don't have LED. Now you have an analog machine. Go ahead and set it up. But they understand the principles of what this voltage knob does, what this amperage knob does. If I need to adjust my frequency or balance, I know what those symbols are. So if I'm on if I go from like a Lincoln S350 with an advanced module where everything's all digital and it's just, the turn of a knob. Now, if I'm using this old Miller Synchrowave, that's the whole thing's analog and it looks like the inside of a cockpit on a plane, I recognize those symbols and I can make those adjustments. So I try to incorporate as much as I can, but like all the equipment that we have is like new state-of-the-art stuff. I want to get some older like transformer rectifier machines in there so they can understand how that stuff works.
Yeah, because again, like we said before, you do have to be well-rounded, and that was also pretty cool about the other instructor that actually reached out to the company and said, hey, dude, give him a fair shake, So it's great that you clarified that a little bit, because I was like, what the hell is this guy talking about? They're just going to go to the next guy if you can't do it, But I didn't realize that they weren't giving the student a fair shake. Yeah,
he had a good working relationship with that contractor, and so he's like, hey, do me a favor, send your test supervisor down here. I just want to see if he can run one of my tests. And he wasn't able to do it. And then he's like, oh shit, yeah, okay, I guess things are different, just based off the equipment. And this is a guy that's been in the industry for 20 years or better. He's the one in charge of hiring everybody. It's like and that's what I don't get is, one thing is everybody's screaming for people right now. Like I had 2 weeks ago, I had 3 phone calls. They both needed 3 welders apiece. So it's like, I need to send out 9 welders. I don't have 9 welders. We just had a graduating class. We got them all placed. I don't have 9 welders left. But the biggest problem is most of the people in the industry, they want them to have that 5-7 years. Why? The average age of a welder is 56 years of age right now. Like, bring in one of these young kids. They've got the skills, they got the motivation, they got the drive, they got the work ethics. They've got a fundamental understanding of how all this stuff works. Bring them into your shop, train them to do what you do, and then you'll have an asset on your hands here. Because they're younger, they're faster, they're more fluid. Teach them while they're able to learn this stuff. That way, once Bob, he retires at age 60, 65, you've already trained his replacement. You've got this rolling line of employees coming through, so your business doesn't have to slow down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess it's different for each company, but and then it's also different for the other workers as well. For some of the older welders, some of the older divers, you do want to help out the younger guys coming in, because again, they're going to be your replacement. To tell you the truth, they're going to be your employees at some point, you guys that are in your 40s, because if you're still sticking around, you're probably going to start thinking about moving into the office, or, you're getting that first foreman spot at your mid 30s, and it's like, if you're not trading the guys under you, you're going to look like an idiot, because the job that you're running is full of people that don't know what they're doing because you didn't take the time to train them, So again, it's really important to kind of share that education, give people a fair shot, a fair shake. They might have a bad first week, people are people, dude. Some people are a little bit more nervous, a little bit more shy, but that doesn't mean that their heart's, not the heart of a freaking blue collar tradesman,
Yeah.
You like I said, you got to give them a fair shake. And as far as people are concerned, people that are going through the dive business, it's not just your big built alpha males and stuff like that too. You've got a good, group of, you got quite a bit of female tradeswomen. You've got a bunch of guys that are a little, more technical, and you got a wide variety of personalities and people. And I'm sure it's the same for welding, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we get all shapes, sizes, and genders and all kinds of stuff. But the one thing they have in common is they want to learn how to be a welder. And we can teach that, and through the power of hydraulics, we can lift heavy stuff being small people, or you can ask somebody that's a bigger guy or a bigger person, be like, hey, grab that in for me, help me out, let's move this. Or you got material handlers. So you don't necessarily have to be like, Billy Badass and big and be able to throw an I-beam up on your shoulder and walk across the job site with it. Ask for help. There's people there that, use that to your advantage. Use your coworkers, be a team player. That's another thing we teach in the program. I'll put them in groups. You got to be a team player, because when you roll on the job site, you, regardless of what, you think you just went through a school, you think you're God's gift to welding, you're not. You got to work as a team. You've got to work, towards a common goal. You're not going to erect a building yourself. You're not going to get all these parts and pieces out of the manufacturing off the line all by yourself. Somebody's got to be there to help you. You need to be able to work as a team player.
And I'm telling you, that's pretty much what it's all about. That's how you support blue collar, is being a team player. And now I'm just like throwing quotes out there.
Quotes are good, man. We'll put them on a t-shirt.
It's too funny. No, dude, like I said, it's been a great episode. We're kind of preaching to the choir, pretty much with our listeners and everything like that, but I'm just saying though, for your audience, if you guys are welders already and want to go through dive school, drop me a line. And then, we can give you some good advice and guidance, listen to our podcast. And I'm saying the same thing for my listeners, freaking check Jason's show out, dude. Diving dries up. You got to get your topside welding chops up. You might have to go back to school.
Yeah. And
there's that silence. Everyone's like, no, yeah, right? Not school again.
And there's a lot of different avenues to get into it, so like, same thing, once you have those welding schools, maybe you want to give commercial diving a try and, go for those different certs. That's one thing I wanted to ask you is, when you guys do different qualifications at depths, what's that depth rating? So if let's say you certify at 150 feet, are you only good to 150 feet? And if you go 160, you got to recert, or is it like 25 foot increments, 50 foot, 75? How's that work?
It's per the job. It's whatever the engineer calls for. So just because you're certified here doesn't mean you're going to be certified over there.
So it's just like topside.
And yeah, it's kind of pretty much how that is.
Yeah, you got to certify per. Well, let me caveat that you're supposed to certify per contractor, but a lot of people they'll accept transfer or certs from one company to the next. But that's if they're willing to take that liability, that's up to them.
And those are only on the special jobs, that I was talking about before. It's not always like that, Okay. So you don't come across that too often. But I'm just saying though, there's times where you do have to certify certain depths, certain metals, and stuff like that,
Okay.
But you got to keep your chops up, too. So you're always learning, always sharpening your skills. Just because you got the cert doesn't mean you're going to be good. You have to constantly sharpen, just like you guys, right?
Yeah, you got to keep applying yourself, and that's the one thing I try to tell everybody is like, don't be afraid to learn new things. And when you think you've mastered one process, move on to another, and don't ever stop learning. Learn as much as you can, because the more you know, the more value you carry. The more value you carry, the more worth you are to an employer. The more skill sets you bring in there. You guys said it the other day on one of your podcasts. Your job is to make that company money. At the end of the day, that's your job, is to make that company money. And by making them money, you're going to make money. And if you make them more money, they're going to pay you more money.
That's pretty much it, dude. That's in a nutshell, that's a great way to end the show. Yeah. This is what we're doing, dude. We're out here doing it. We're living it. And we're sharing this knowledge and education to all our listeners and those that, want to do what we do. Because I tell you what, man, being a welder's badass. Being a commercial diver is badass. Being in the trades is badass. People want to be us. People hate us because they ain't us.
Yeah, exactly. They hate you until they need their electricity turned on, or they need, their bumper welded back up, or, they need their engine or their car worked on. Then they love you until they get the bill.
Yeah. Until they get the bill.
Until they get the bill.
People are appalled at, oh my God, this guy makes this much, and I went to school for 6 years.
Yeah, I
gotta look around because my wife's probably listening.
Yeah, you're only here for 20 minutes. How are you going to charge me that? Well, I got a 4 hour minimum, man. Here you go.
Yeah, my wife went to Miami and got a 4-year degree in Miami. We're still in debt over that.
Yeah. I'm still paying on my student loan.
$80,000, dude.
Yeah, I'm still paying on my student loan. So I speak from experience when I talk about transferring from, that doing a college degree into blue collar, because I could have very well just kept going on that other route, but I knew it wasn't for me. Don't force yourself into that hole if you don't need to be in it.
Yeah, definitely want to do another one of these joint episodes. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
And I can't wait till we both put it out. We're both going to put this out soon. And stay tuned for more news of Skilled Trades Network. And definitely, like I said, let's do another dual episode.
Yeah, man, we'll set it up. Before we get out of here, go ahead, plug your podcast, your social media, websites, anything like that, so listeners at Arc Junkies can follow you and tune into your episodes.
Nice, and you do the same thing afterwards. Again, this is LB Diver with the Bottom Dwellers Dive Shack. We're a commercial diving podcast by working divers for divers. And our sponsors have been really great to us. We have Pressure Junkies as one of our sponsors. They do wetsuits. So if you guys want a badass wetsuit with pockets and anything that you could use in the commercial field, it's a great suit. Looks good, feels good. And Ocean Eye Inc. is another one of our sponsors. And 15 Fathoms, wearing the hat right now. They've been pretty good to us. And Baytech Industries.
Nice. You can follow Arc Junkies on Instagram at Arc Junkies Podcast. You can check out the Arc Junkies website, arcjunkies.com. Put out new episodes every Monday.
Forgot our website. I plugged all our sponsors, but not even my own.
Oh, go ahead, man.
We're at thebottomdwellers.com. If you guys want more info, that's thebottomdwellers.com. Instagram, Bottom Dwellers DS. Facebook, Bottom Dwellers Dive Shack. Okay. And then your name of your podcast, Bottom Dwellers Dive Shack? Yep, Bottom Dwellers Dive Shack. That we can find on all major podcast networks, Spotify, Apple, Google, all the good stuff.
Awesome. Well, it was great having you on the show, man. I appreciate you having me on your show as well.
Yeah, this is great. All right, Jason. Well, thanks a lot for coming on, man. This is awesome. LB Diver, out.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in and giving the show a listen. Be sure to give the Bottom Dwellers Dive Shack a follow on Instagram and check out their episodes wherever you listen to the Arc Junkies podcast. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every well better than your last.